He treated the owner like hired help, and the owner let him. Stay with this one. Hit subscribe if you're new. You don't want to miss what's coming. The guy pointed at me with a phone in one hand and a smirk on his face and said, "Hey, staff, you with the pole, make that water camera ready. And don't scratch the surface." He didn't know who I was. My name's Tobin Mercer. I'm 59 now, but I was 56 when that smug little punk talked to me like I was the janitor. I own Glasshaven Pavilion, Cape Brine, Maine. It's a glass and iron greenhouse with a salt-reflecting pool out back that shows every smudge like it's judging you. Back then, it was barely holding together, and rebuilding it kept me sane after the divorce. Briggs Kincaid was the buyer. 34, influencer energy, party investor type with that cash flash attitude that infects everything around him. His agent, Carter Spence, talked like Briggs was some kind of savior for the property. That morning, our caretaker Rafi was sick, so I was out there alone, skimming the salt pool because cloudy water looks like neglect in pictures. It was early, barely past 8, and I was already sweating through my jacket. Then I heard them, shoes on stone, a voice too loud, like it needed an audience. Briggs showed up with 2 guys and a camera running, acting like the place already had his name on it. He clocked my faded work clothes and decided I was a nobody. He got close enough that his cologne hit first, expensive, chemical, trying too hard, and told me he had VIP guests coming and didn't want maintenance guys in the frame. I said, "The sale hasn't closed, and you're here early." He laughed like that was adorable. "It's closed in everything that matters. Paperwork is just paperwork." Then he pointed toward the greenhouse and told me to stay out of the way and don't talk to investors. He said if I caused problems, he'd make sure no one in the county hires me again. His friend leaned in and asked, "Is the help going to be a problem?" Briggs grinned. He'll do what he's told. They always do. I didn't correct him. Didn't explain a thing. I nodded, kept my face still, and went back to skimming like I worked for him. Because the second he looked at me and didn't see the owner, I knew exactly what I had: space. He kept talking like I wasn't there, calling the pavilion a creator compound, tossing ideas like confetti, and I let him. He filmed himself owning my life's work, and I just watched, pole in hand, water clearing beneath me. And while he saw a building he could gut for content, I felt something lock in, something colder than anger and sharper than pride. I didn't argue. I planned. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. He kept walking and talking like he owned the place, but the second I heard their SUV pull off down the gravel drive, I set the pole down and went inside without saying a word. Didn't flip a single light. I know Glasshaven like muscle memory. This building's not a house, never was. It was built a century ago for summer galas, botany lectures, and those garden parties rich people used to throw with string quartets and orchids floating in punch bowls. The bones are real: iron beams, curved glass, limestone floors that hold the echo of every step. The main corridor runs the length of the building, lined with support columns, and right there, stuck on one of them like a brand, was a strip of blue painter's tape. Written across it in thick black marker was one word: remove. I stopped walking. Another one was stuck under a stained glass frame: replace with clear. Then I saw more. Tape on the mural wall. Paint over. The kind of casual vandalism that comes from someone who thinks new automatically means better. When I reached the library door, I stopped dead. The room was locked, like always, but there was another label slapped right across the center panel: Content Studio. I pulled the keys from my belt and let myself in, even though part of me didn't want to see what was waiting. That room is mine. It's the heart of the place. Rebuilt shelves modeled after the original sketches, botanical archives restored by hand, and a locked display case full of heirlooms donated by families whose names are carved into Cape Brine history. That case holds hand-labeled seed packets, pruning shears with initials carved into the handles, pressed plant specimens from conservatory donors, things people gave to me because they believed I'd protect them. And there it was again, tape on the newly restored trim, demo shelves. Like the whole place was just a blank set waiting to be flattened into reels and reposts. I sat down, right there on the library floor. Not for drama, just to stay upright. The cold from the stone floor came through my jeans, but I didn't move. I needed a second to take it in. Briggs didn't just want to use Glasshaven. He wanted to wipe it clean. I thought about all those winter nights during the rebuild. Me in a headlamp, Hollis Vane cursing over rusted screws, our hands raw from sealant and cold. Half the time, I had Sloane's divorce filings dinging into my inbox while we worked, each one labeled like a countdown. Sloane didn't slam doors or scream. She made a spreadsheet, labeled what was hers, and left. She called Glasshaven your hobby, not a life. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either. I didn't rebuild this place to prove her wrong. I rebuilt it because I needed something solid when everything else cracked. And now some smug little social investor thought he could walk in and erase it because he had a drone guy and a cash offer. I pulled my phone out and opened the contract file. Took a minute to scroll through the PDF, and there it was. Clause 11, subsection D, Epi Knox's idea. Heritage Preservation Clause. Seller retains the right to cancel if the buyer demonstrates clear intent to destroy or alter protected features prior to transfer. Most people skim over that. Most people don't plan for sabotage before the ink is dry. But I had it. I started taking photos. Each strip of tape, one by one. Zoomed in, made sure the labels were sharp, the location clear, the timestamp visible. Because I've learned the hard way, feelings don't hold up in court. But evidence? That gets heard. By early afternoon, I was back in the office over the old ticket booth. Window cracked for airflow, coffee gone cold, the whole place smelling like dust and sea air. My phone was already in my hand before I sat down. I called Juno Red. She ran ops for Glasshaven now, but before that, she did logistics and venue security for corporate retreats. She's the type who can get a head count from a blurry group photo and track down a vendor through a receipt watermark. I didn't even say hello. I told her, Briggs is acting like he owns the place already. She didn't sound surprised. Just said, "Do you want me to watch his feeds?" I said yes. Anything recent, anything with interiors. 30 minutes later, she sent a screen recording, filmed off another screen, grainy, time-stamped, and enough to make my stomach turn. One of her contacts who watches local influencer garbage for private security jobs had saved it. There was Briggs walking through my library with a drink in one hand, holding his phone up with the other like a tour guide in a theme park. This used to be like some kind of old aquarium for nerd plants, he said, spinning the camera toward the mural. We'll tear this out, go clean and clear. Color doesn't sell. I didn't need to watch twice. I saw the same trim I restored, the same wood floor I paid to reseal. I saw his shoe, his actual shoe, on the same tile I scrubbed with a handbrush after the foundation team tracked in mud last winter. The part that really caught me wasn't the insults. I can live with idiots. It was him saying, "Paperwork's just a formality. I've got the keys. No one's gonna stop me." I didn't see him inside the night before, but he'd been there. The camera caught his hand resting on the locked display case like it was a prop, like it meant nothing. Later I found out how he got in. Carter's office had the lockbox code for scheduled walkthroughs. Someone on Briggs's side handed it over like it was a party favor. He treated access like ownership. And then he laughed, actually laughed, about making sure the town won't bother him. That's when he dropped the name. Pike's cool with it. Daryl Pike, neighborhood association chair. Cape Brine's unofficial gatekeeper. The guy who acts like he's protecting old money tradition, but everybody knows he's more about quiet bribes than quiet streets. I forwarded the video straight to Epi. He called me back 5 minutes later, voice rough. "Tobin, this is ugly," he said. But ugly isn't always actionable. "I've got tape markers. I've got the claws." "That helps," he admitted. "But intent is soft. We need something hard. Something they can't call content." So I did what I always do when I need truth that holds up. I pulled up the town's permit portal. It's public, but buried. Most people don't even know it exists. I typed in Glasshaven's parcel number and sorted by date. There it was. Filed 5 days ago. An application to modify interiors and remove decorative glazing. Applicant, Kincaid Coastal Ventures. That's Briggs's shell company. I'd seen the name on Carter's emails. And the killer detail? He listed himself as owner, not pending buyer. Attached to the form was a rough floor plan showing clear glass where stained had been, and shelving replaced with content production zones. The tape markers in real life matched his paper plans. I called Epi back. He filed permits under his name, I said. Claimed ownership. Epi went quiet, then said low and measured, "That's not just arrogance. That's a false statement on a government form. That changes what we can do." 10 minutes later, Juno sent one more thing. "Check this," her message said. Attached was a screenshot of internal staff notes for Briggs's upcoming house event. There it was, plain as day. If Tobin Mercer shows up, keep him out of VIP. Use service entrance only. They knew exactly who I was. They just decided I didn't belong in my own building. I stared at that line on my phone a second longer than I needed to, then called Epi back before the anger had time to cool into something useless. He picked up quick. "We cancel now," he said, like he'd already made the call in his head. I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the pavilion through the dusty office window. No, not yet. There was a pause. "Tobin, he filed a false permit and broke access terms. You have grounds." "I know exactly what I have," I said, "and I also know what he is. If I pull this now, he doesn't walk away clean. He throws a fit, and that fit happens inside my building." Epi exhaled slow. "So what are you proposing?" "I want the cancellation drafted. Sealed, not emailed. I want it in my hands so I decide when it lands." He didn't like it, but he understood control when he heard it. "All right," he said, "but don't wait too long." "I won't," I said, and ended the call. That evening, I met Hollis Vane at Glasshaven. He showed up in his usual work jacket, no small talk, just a nod before he started walking the space like he was reading damage off the walls. He pointed at the tape marks, one after another, like he was counting offenses. "They're not guessing," he said. "They're staging." "I see that," I told him. He stopped in the corridor and looked at me straight. "You sell to this guy, he turns it into a circus. Lights, rigs, people hanging off beams that weren't built for it. I'm not planning to let that happen. Hollis nodded once. Then don't get clever in a way that bites you. If you're trapping him, do it clean. No tricks that make you look like the problem. I don't need tricks, I said. I just need him to keep being himself. That got the closest thing to a smile I'd ever seen from Hollis. After he left, I made another call. Nellie Hart picked up on the second ring, voice steady but tired in that way that comes from years of caring about things other people ignore. Nellie, someone plans to paint over the mural, I said. She didn't speak for a second. Then, quiet and sharp, tell me what you need. I need you present during an event this weekend. Official reason, humidity check, preservation oversight. That's not even a lie, she said. I'll be there. Next was Juno. She already had the vendor list pulled before I asked. There's one you'll like, she said. Marla Quill, catering manager, doesn't bend easy. Get me her number. Marla answered like a professional, direct, no fluff. I gave her the situation stripped down to facts. Private property. Sale not closed. Buyer acting like it is. She didn't hesitate. Where are your sensitive areas and what stays off limits? Library, stained glass corridor, donor display case. Done, she said. I'll reroute staff traffic and keep bodies away without making it obvious. That was exactly what I needed. Control without noise. After that, I checked the building systems. Not alarms people think about, but the ones tied to the archive registration. The donor artifacts aren't just sentimental, they're logged with the county. Any forced entry on that case or door sends a silent alert straight to a private line, and the heritage officer on call. No sirens. Just a record that can't be argued away. Meanwhile, Juno kept working angles I wouldn't have thought of. She set up a burner account to track Briggs's posts, grabbed screenshots of him hyping the event, and lined up a videographer through a sponsor connection. Officially, he's there for content, she told me. Unofficially, he keeps copies of everything. Good, I said. Because people like Briggs only tell the truth when they think it's performance. Before I locked up, I went to the supply closet and pulled out an old staff polo and a plain cap. Nothing special. The kind of uniform that disappears in a crowd. I held it for a second, then put it on. I wasn't doing this to feel smart or to prove a point. I was doing it because if I walked in as the owner, he'd posture. If I walked in as nobody, he'd expose himself. And I needed him exposed. So I adjusted the cap, grabbed a clipboard, and got ready to walk into my own building like I didn't belong there. At the check-in table, a woman I recognized from Carter's emails moved through the room with the quiet efficiency of someone who never looked like staff. Maris Lockhart, Briggs's right hand, always 2 steps ahead, always holding the schedule when he wanted to look carefree. She brushed past me without slowing, eyes forward, but she tilted her phone just enough for me to catch a banner alert at the top of her screen. Permit update. Then she was gone, threading through the crowd like nothing had happened. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. Not without blowing the whole setup. So I stuck to the plan. The catering tables were set up too close to the archival wing, and I saw 2 bartenders dragging a backup cooler right past a "Do Not Block" sign taped to the donor cabinet wall. I stepped in, held the cooler mid-slide, and said, "That hallway's tight. Use the side hall or you'll get a bottleneck." The guy nodded and shifted course. Didn't question it. Uniforms speak louder than titles in a place like this. A few minutes later, I passed Marla near the rear service doors. She didn't break stride, just murmured, "Crowd's building. Staff's good. No one's touched your zones." I gave her a small nod, kept moving. My palms were sweating inside my gloves. From outside, Juno texted again, 200 watching. He just told a guest he's doing a full gut job. I've got audio. That made the chalk marks along the corridor sting harder. They weren't just random doodles, they were measurements. 2 near the 3rd stained glass panel had a slash and a number, 22 inches, contractor shorthand for a cut line. I stared at it for too long. Then I caught myself and moved on. I couldn't afford to look like a guy taking inventory. Nellie came through the side garden gate just before 8. She had her old field clipboard in one hand, humidity monitor in the other, and a calm face like she'd done this 1,000 times. She nodded to me as she passed and said, "Just loud enough. Humidity's stable. I'll note it." Briggs saw her and gave a loud greeting like she was a prop too. "Make sure you tag me if you post anything cool," he called out, then turned right back to his crew without waiting for a response. Inside, the music was louder now. LED strips were lit across the ceiling arches, taped over century-old iron beams like this was a warehouse pop-up, not a registered historic site. I moved toward the bar just to make a loop, and that's when I saw her, Sloane. She was standing with Beck, smiling at some sponsor rep, her hand on his arm like they were the picture of health and happiness. Then she turned, locked eyes with me, and that smile stayed on like a mask. She walked over, heels sharp on the tile. "So this is what you do now?" she asked, not even pretending she didn't know. I said, "I'm working," and didn't give her more. She let her eyes scan the uniform, the hat, the clipboard. Her mouth twisted a little. Then she said, "Well, it suits you." Then she walked off like she'd just closed a tab. I stood there for maybe half a second longer than I should have, then turned and kept moving. Every second I stayed still was a risk. Near the hallway to the back offices, I saw Maris again. This time she looked at me differently. Not confused, not dismissive, just still. She took her phone out like she was checking a message, then angled the screen ever so slightly as she passed. It was deliberate. The kind of move you make when you want something seen without being caught sharing it. I caught the top line of a banner alert. Permit update, it said. Nothing more but the timing and the way she showed it. That wasn't random. She didn't stop. Didn't break stride. But that was the first real sign that maybe, just maybe, not everyone on his side wanted him to win. I moved back toward the reflecting pool without looking behind me. The water shimmered under the temporary lights like it was trying to warn me. I had no doubt Briggs would burn this place down if he felt cornered, which meant I had to make sure the corner felt like his idea. I didn't look at Sloane. I didn't speak. I just turned and walked the long way around the donor hall, staying invisible, just another staff body moving behind the scenes while the party turned louder and sloppier by the minute. By 9, the pavilion was jammed. Easy 250 guests, maybe more. Phones up, backs turned to the building like the only thing that mattered was their own face in the frame. The rented platform floated just barely stable on the reflecting pool, and I could see the surface rippling under it like the water was getting tired of holding up the show. Briggs had the mic again, pacing in front of the stained glass corridor like it was his own personal TED Talk. "We're not just updating the vibe," he said. "We're reinventing what this place means. Major renovation reveal coming soon. Trust me, you're gonna want your name attached to this moment." Juno texted me from her spot down the block. 3 angles live. One videographer uploading raw footage straight to a cloud folder she controlled. That meant everything happening inside Glasshaven was being captured. Multiple feeds, off-site backups, time-stamped. I took another slow lap through the outer hallway, checking corners. Marla was running her crew with surgical precision. I watched her steer a tray passer away from the library wing with nothing but a smile and a finger point. "Private prep area," she said, no hesitation. But you can only redirect for so long before someone thinks the word private means exclusive. Around 9:40, I caught sight of Kier Wynn, the same planner who told staff to use the service entrance for me, walking fast with 2 guys in influencer black, all teeth and hair product. They were headed straight for the library door. Kier had a camera gimbal in one hand and a badge lanyard swinging off his hip. "VIP content rooms in here," he said. "We need the donor case in the background." "Good light." One of the guys rattled the handle. "Door's locked." "Break it if you have to," Kier said, annoyed. He owns it. That was the moment. I stepped closer, didn't say a word, just stayed near enough to hear the scrape of metal on the old brass lock plate. The sound of a flathead or a thin pry tool hitting resistance. That was all it took. Glasshaven's artifact protection system didn't throw alarms. It wasn't built for drama. The second that lock was tampered with, it triggered a silent alert, one to our private line, the other to the on-call county heritage officer. I didn't react. I didn't run over or shout or tip my hand. I turned and walked calmly toward the south stairwell and pulled out my phone. I texted Epi one word, triggered. He replied less than a minute later, "Good, hold steady." I looped back toward the back service hallway. That's when Nellie Hart passed me by the vendor entrance, clipboard still in hand. She murmured under her breath, "County car at the gate. No lights." Heritage plates. That meant they took it seriously. That meant someone official was watching now. Then Maris Lockhart appeared again, this time at my elbow. No lead-in, no warning. She didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead and said, "He's going to try to blame you." Before I could answer, she slipped a folded receipt into my hand. Nothing fancy, no envelope, no dramatic pause, just a folded rectangle of thermal paper. Inside it, a flash drive. Attached to it with a neon pink sticky note was a handwritten passcode. Underneath that, 5 quiet words in clean cursive, "Chat backup, don't mention me." She walked away like she'd never stopped. I slid the whole thing into my pocket and looked up. Across the pavilion, Daryl Pike was shaking hands like he was the mayor of the night, working sponsors, smiling too wide, laughing too long. That's when I knew it for sure. Briggs didn't just think he'd bought my property. He thought he'd bought the entire town. And the way he grinned at the cameras made it clear he still believed the room belonged to him. Sloane drifted past again on her way to the lounge area, drink in hand. She leaned in, voice smooth and low, and said, "Briggs says you're stalling the closing. Don't embarrass yourself." I didn't blink. I didn't answer. Because this wasn't about her, or him, or whatever they thought I was trying to prove. This was about protecting the only thing I'd built with both hands and my own money, and the trap was already closing. At 10:15, right when the music dipped and the crowd surged toward the bar like it was their last chance to be seen, I slipped out of the shadows behind the service corridor and made my way to the back office. I shut the door, peeled off the staff polo, folded it flat, and hung the plain cap on the coat hook where it used to live when I was fixing plumbing between weddings. I changed into a charcoal gray suit. Notier. No pocket square, just a clean shirt, sharp cuffs, and the look of a man who knew where the money came from. When I stepped out and crossed the side hall toward the library, I moved fast but steady. No drama, no stomp. I wanted eyes on me, but not yet. I pushed open the library door and walked inside like I'd never left. It didn't take long. Briggs followed me, and less than 10 seconds later, he had his phone up, filming like he was breaking news, smiling that influencer smile, the one that hides panic behind fake confidence. "Well, look who's back in VIP," he said. "Caught the help trying to sneak in where they don't belong. Someone get this guy out of here." I didn't answer. I let him dig. He turned the phone toward me and said to his viewers, "This is Tobin, the bitter caretaker who doesn't know how ownership works. We're gonna be patient with him. He's having a rough time." I waited until he held still, trying to get a clean angle. That's when I spoke. "My name is Tobin Mercer," I said, clear and steady. "I'm the current owner of Glasshaven Pavilion. The sale has not closed. You are not authorized to be in this room." That was the first time he flinched. It wasn't fear, it was delay. His brain stalled just for a second. He knew my name. He just hadn't expected me to say it like that. Then his mouth twisted. "Oh, come on," he snapped. "This again? I've already wired the down payment. We're in the grace period." He moved closer, chest puffed. "Stop playing games. Show me the deed. Show me the signature. Let's go." Before I could answer, Carter Spence appeared in the doorway like a wet dog, sweating through his dress shirt. "Gentlemen," he said, eyes darting, we can take this offline. Handle this privately." I ignored him. I opened my bag and pulled out the sealed envelope Epi had given me. I laid it on the center table like I was dropping a stone. Then I slid across a printed copy of the permit application Briggs had filed with the town, where he'd listed himself as the owner of a property he didn't legally own. Briggs scoffed. "It was pre-planning, dude. Just trying to stay ahead of the curve." I looked at Carter. He had gone white. Agents know the difference between pre-planning and falsifying government records. He could see exactly where this was headed. I said, "This is a formal cancellation under the preservation clause of our contract. You demonstrated intent to destroy protected features. I have video evidence. I have marked tape. I have a log of an active security incident tied to forced entry." Briggs stepped closer, voice low, like he thought that made it real. "You're done here," he said. "You try to make this stick, I'll ruin you. I've got friends on every board that matters. Planning, zoning, historic trust. You'll never get a permit again." Then he looked toward the door like he was expecting someone, like Daryl Pike was going to come walk in and handle it for him. I reached into my bag again and pulled out my laptop. Plugged in the flash drive. It opened fast. Folder name, Briggs chat logs. Inside were screenshots. Message after message. Briggs to someone unnamed saying, "Don't worry about Pike. I've got him handled." Another one, "We start demo the second the wire clears." Another, "Mercer will fold like they all do." I turned the screen so only Briggs could see it. I didn't say Maris's name. I didn't have to. His face changed. It was like watching a kid get caught with his hand in a safe and realize the camera was on the whole time. His mouth opened but nothing came out. Because he knew. He'd been exposed by someone who knew exactly where the matches were and when to light them. I didn't wait for Briggs to catch up. I walked straight out of the library and onto the main floor, where the bass was shaking rented speakers that were zip-tied to historic beams like this was a warehouse rave, not a registered preservation site. The crowd was in full tilt, music pounding, glass clinking, influencers spinning in circles for phone videos, while the foundation beneath them flexed under the weight of too many people pretending nothing mattered. Behind me, Briggs stormed out, still filming, still narrating like this was some kind of prank war and he was gonna win the internet with his takedown of the old guy in a suit. He shouted for security, like he owned security. I didn't respond. I went right to the sound booth where Pax Dorsey, our contracted DJ tech, sat watching the levels like they were a heartbeat he didn't want to flatline. I leaned in and said, calm and low, "Cut the master." "Now." He looked at me, confused for half a second, until I showed him my owner ID card and the text from the county heritage officer with the incident number. That was all he needed. He hit a button, and the pavilion dropped into silence like somebody had pulled the oxygen out of the room. The shift was instant. Phones went up. Heads turned. Confusion hit like cold water, and in the middle of it all, I stepped forward and took the mic before Briggs could even think about grabbing it back. I didn't yell. I didn't pitch it like drama. I said, plain and steady, "This event is over. The property sale has been canceled. You are on private grounds without authorization. Law enforcement and a county heritage officer are at the gate." The silence cracked. Then came the murmurs. People turned to each other, then to their phones, then back to me. The buzz built fast, like static before a storm. Briggs lunged forward, face twisted like he couldn't believe the story wasn't going his way. He grabbed for the mic and shouted, "That's a lie! The deed is minutes from closing. Possession is everything. I'm here, this is mine." Then he made the mistake, the one that sealed it. He yelled, loud enough for the whole building to hear, "I don't care if it's protected, I'll tear it out anyway." And just like that, it turned. because every phone in that room caught it. Different angles, different filters, different captions. But the audio was clear, and the message was worse than anything I could have scripted. Even the most tuned-out partygoers heard that line and went still. You don't threaten to destroy history in a town built on it, not while standing in the middle of it. Near the entrance, the heritage officer stepped into view. No vest, no weapon, just a badge and a clipboard, backed by 2 police cruisers pulling up slow with lights on but sirens off. The moment had weight. Official, measured, and impossible to spin. And right on cue, Daryl Pike tried to slide into the gap like some backroom fixer, smiling that politician smile as he approached the officer with a handshake already half raised. The officer didn't take it. He held up the permit application instead and said, voice sharp and clipped, "Mr. Pike, why is your name referenced in the applicant's communications?" You could feel the eyes shift, even the ones still holding drinks. Carter Spence backed away fast, already calculating whether a disappearing act could save his license. He looked at Briggs, then the officer, then down at his phone like maybe he had somewhere else to be. Kier Wynn wasn't even subtle. He turned to the catering crew and said, "Start packing. Now." He moved like a man who didn't want to be on the wrong end of a timeline. And just like that, the room started to drain. It took less than 20 minutes. Rideshare alerts pinged, banners came down. The sponsors who showed up for press shots started peeling off like this was a crime scene, and they didn't want their logo anywhere near it. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. Briggs was still standing there, mouth open, phone still rolling. But now he wasn't the main character anymore. He was just content. And every guest in the room had a front row seat to his fall. When the last drunk straggler stumbled out and the final SUV cleared the lot, the Pavilion finally exhaled. You could feel it. Ocean wind through the cracked side doors, cool air washing the last of the party smell out. No more subwoofer rattle in the beams, no ring lights pulsing against 100-year-old glass. Just quiet. Just breath. Marla Quill didn't leave a crumb behind. She ran cleanup like a closing shift at a high-end restaurant, calm, efficient, nothing wasted. She boxed untouched food and told her crew to take it home. I walked over and told her, "You earned every dollar and then some." She gave me a tired smile and nodded once. Hollis Vane showed up with a flashlight and a clipboard, walked the perimeter slow, eyes low. "Scuffed stone at the side entry," he muttered. "Gouge in that northwest rail." He tapped the iron with the light's end. Temporary rig marks near the east truss. Then he shrugged and said, "Could have been worse." That was about as close as he got to optimism. Nellie Hart stood in front of the mural wall like it was a living thing. She ran her fingers a few inches above the paint, never touching, never rushing. "Thank you," she said, not looking at me, "for not letting them whitewash it." I knew she meant more than the wall. The next morning I met Epi at his office. He handed me a cup of black coffee that tasted like rust and consequence. He said, "Cancellation's in. Trespass documented. Permit fraud reported. Town office can't ignore it now." I nodded, then asked, "You see the video yet?" He hadn't, but Juno had. She met me later that afternoon and showed me what she'd already cut together. Briggs yelling, "I don't care if it's protected," caught from 3 separate angles. She didn't even need voiceover. That clip would do more damage than a courtroom transcript. Midday, Sloan called me. Not to ask how I was doing, just to say Beck's friends think you staged that whole thing. Word is you tanked the sale for attention. I kept my voice flat. I didn't stage anything. Briggs performed. People recorded. She went quiet, then asked, softer, "Are you going to lose the money?" I told her the truth. Yeah. Canceling means refinancing. Means fighting. But I'd rather fight than let Glasshaven get gutted for clicks. That was the end of that call. Later that night, Epi forwarded me an email from Maris Lockhart. New address. Simple subject line. She wrote, "This confirms I will verify the authenticity of the chat logs if subpoenaed. I want out, and I want it on record." 2 days later, Daryl Pike resigned from his committee for personal reasons, which in Cape Brine is the same as guilt in a suit and tie. Town council announced a permit review panel by the end of the week. Carter Spence sent a short email, said he didn't know Briggs had submitted anything early. Epi replied with one line, "Please send all communications." That meant, in lawyer terms, buckle up. That night, I took a walk around the reflecting pool myself. No clipboard. No disguise. Just me. I tested the water, skimmed the surface, watched the ripple go clean. It hit me right then. Glasshaven wasn't just a project to survive my divorce. It was the only thing I'd fought for without asking anyone's permission. 6 months later, the dust settled in a way I didn't expect. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady consequences landing where they should. Briggs didn't bounce back. Not like those guys always say they will. His sponsorships dried up. His event permits got flagged in 3 towns. And that video, the one with him yelling about not caring if something's protected, followed him like a stain he couldn't scrub off with money or spin. Epi negotiated like a man with time on his side. Briggs's own words, filings, and live streams had boxed him in so tight there was no room for bluff. The settlement didn't make headlines, but it paid off my legal costs and covered a big piece of the restoration budget. Carter Spence lost his buyer rep privileges in the fallout. Officially, it was for procedural misconduct. Off the record, he backed the wrong man too hard and too publicly. I didn't celebrate, but I won't lie, it felt like balance finally showing its face. Maris left Briggs. Quiet exit. No statement. Moved to Portland. When the county subpoenaed the chat logs, she gave her deposition and then disappeared from the whole narrative. I never said her name to anyone, but I made sure Epi sent her a simple message. You did the right thing. I couldn't keep Glasshaven running like nothing happened. Pretending the financial hit didn't matter would have been childish. So I refinanced with a local credit union and worked out a partnership with a small coastal heritage nonprofit. They helped us plan public events, ones that respected the space and didn't try to turn it into a digital playground. Hollis stayed on. We fixed every surface Briggs' crew had stressed. Railings, floor seams, window tracks. We didn't rush it. We just took our time and did it right. Nellie helped me document the mural and stained glass installations for an official registry update. That way, the next buyer, if there ever is one, can't claim ignorance. Not legally. Juno kept her role. She runs ops now like a watchdog with a spreadsheet. Tells everyone her job is making sure rich people don't get creative with other people's property. But what she really did was help me rebuild something I hadn't trusted in a while. People. Sloan came by once. Some kind of bank paperwork had to be signed in person. She walked through the pavilion slower than I expected, looked around like she didn't recognize what it had become. She said, "You really kept it." I just said, "Yeah." The reflecting pool's still how I check the building's health. Saltwater doesn't lie. On a cold morning in early March, I skimmed it, watched the surface settle clean, and stood there with a kind of quiet that didn't ask for praise. That night, when I locked up, it didn't feel like I was guarding some fragile pride project. It felt like I was finally locking a door on my own terms, and not handing the key to the next loud man with a camera. Hold up. Can I ask you something personal before you go? If you've ever had someone with money or ego try to take what you built, would you fight to keep it or cash out for peace? If you've got the hype feature, tap it to support this video and help it reach more people. Please subscribe and hit like. It's one click and it really matters. Then drop a comment, even if it's just good story, or tell me what you would have done.